Wonderful. All right, we are now recording, and this is our second class of our preservation series we are doing through NC Cooperative Extension in Stanly County. However, anyone in the world is invited to come and take this class. It is, the good thing about doing it online, usually when I do it in person, I buy a bunch of produce and we all can together. So I do charge for that, but I really can't do that virtually. So the good thing is that it is free, and this, as Leslie pointed out, this is a really neat way to do this in a different format and in a way that you can do it from the comfort of your homes, or you can watch the recording again if you felt like you missed something. So this is a really, it might be in the future you decide to come to a class in person, but you can always have this recording to fall back on if you feel like you need a refresher. So I think that's a very positive spin on this virtual class. Another positive spin is I get to co-teach with somebody that I don't get to co-teach with a lot. So again, we've got Debbie Stroud on the line. I'm so blessed to know her, to have her her expertise around food safety. So she is kind of one of our go-to food safety area specialized agents that just really gets to focus on food safety 100% of the time, and is the support system for all of us agents. And so that's why I was so glad to have her here today, because again, food preservation is a lot of fun, and I try to teach it annually, but it's really a seasonal thing. And after a year goes by of not teaching something, you start to feel a little rusty. And so that's how I get year after year. But that's just my little intro, you guys. And again, at any point, throw a reaction, throw a comment. I want this to feel as interactive as possible, even though we're not together physically. I want us to feel like we are as much as we can. So again, we've got safe plates. So welcome back to those who did the intro to canning. If you are interested in getting that recording and you didn't sign up for that class, shoot me an email and I'm happy to send that your way. So Safe Plates is our food safety classes overall through NC State University Extension, and they are such well put together programs, and I'm glad that we recently added our home food preservation classes to this mix. And so today we're going to focus on boiling water canning. And boiling water canning is a great place to start with canning. And if you did take the intro class, you know that there's really only two ways that we should be canning at home. We've got our boiling water canning, and we've got our pressure canning. So today, it's all about boiling water canning. We're going to talk about the steps. So before we get started, is there anything anybody wants to share about what brought them to class, what they're excited to can, anything like that? And if you share in the chat box, Debbie's going to be in charge of our chat box, so she can share what you say. And I'm going to close these and turn on another light. Okay. See, maybe that will help y'all to see my face. I don't know. This is kind of a weird room because I don't have an overhead light. And it's weird lighting today. All right. So do we have any comments? Everybody's being quiet for me right now. All right. Well, we are going to continue. I'll tell you why I'm excited, because this is the first boiling water class I've done virtually. And it's just a change of pace. I'm not going to lie. I've been teaching extension classes for almost 10 years now, and there are certain things that bring back nerves, and I don't know, and it's usually doing something new, and it's a little bit more uncomfortable. So even though I've been teaching in front of people for a while, and even though I've done several canning classes, that first virtual canning class, I felt nervous about because it was just a completely different format and something I haven't done yet. So bear with me as we're all kind of learning together here and doing something a little different. So let's see if we can move forward. Boiling water canning, yay! So we're doing it. We're excited. And hopefully everything will come out looking just like that when you guys do it at home. I also want to plug something in while it's on my mind, because something that's important to me is being able to see you all have success in doing this. And so if you do, dive into boiling water bath canning at home after this presentation, or you have a big success, please email me pictures. Please email me comments of what went well, what went wrong, anything. And heads up before we get into this, no matter how long you've canned, things are going to go wrong sometimes. And that's just a part of life. Sometimes we're great at canning, or we've been doing it for years, and for whatever reason something doesn't seal, or just something ends up being off. But in general, what we're going to learn today is how to minimize those things from happening and how to get a safe product. That is our goal. These are our learning objectives for today. We're going to know why to choose boiling water canning as a preservation method. And again, if you took that intro class, hopefully you already kind of know why. We're also going to recognize appropriate foods for boiling water canning. So again, we've got two different methods. There's a reason for that. We need one for certain foods. We need the other for other foods. We're going to understand the equipment for boiling water canning. Pretty simple equipment and pretty inexpensive. Another positive thing to boiling water bath canning. We're going to demonstrate the steps for boiling water canning. So even though we've got different recipes for different types of food, in general, you're going to follow a very very specific steps for each one. They might be prepared a little bit different. They might be processed for different times. You might have different headspace, but in general, you're going to have the same steps for our boiling water canning. Lastly, we're going to identify which home preserved canned foods can be sold in North Carolina. So a lot of people are interested in this just because maybe you garden and you want to know how you can safely preserve that food for yourself, for your family. But some people want to take it a step further. And you know what? You might be at a place now that you don't even realize it. You get so involved in canning and love it so much that you do want to share that love with others. So you might not be to this bullet point now, but you might find that you get there in the future. So this is great information to know. So can anybody unmute themselves or chat in the chat box, whichever you prefer? What have your experiences been with boiling water canning? And if none, say if you've had some good ones, bad ones. I want to know where you are currently with boiling water bath canning. And I'll give people time to chat if they want to do that.
I was gonna say that I've never done any sort of canning at all. So
awesome. And that was Caitlin, right?
Yeah.
Perfect. Well, Caitlin, I expect to see some pictures, and I want to see some things from you for sure in the near future. So I'm excited to hear from you once you do that.
Definitely, I'm excited.
Yay! All right. Anybody else want to share where they've been or what they've done? Where they've been. All right. Well, if you change your mind, you can do that. All right, so we're going to move forward. I will share my experience. I grew up with my grandma, still to this day at 88 years old, cans everything that she grows, and so I helped her snap green beans when I was little, and I never in my life thought that I would be able to do it. And then I fell in love with nutrition, and that led me to cooperative extension, where I had to learn how to do it to teach other people. So I really learned and started canning as an extension agent. And that's my experience. I currently don't have a stovetop that at home that allows for canning. And we're actually in the process of getting our kitchen renovated. So we'll kind of do a mock activity today, and we'll get to that point in a little while, but we'll also talk about some reasons why, you know what, not all equipment is made for canning. You know, it's not just about buying the proper canner, it's about making sure that you have the right equipment to can on too. So unfortunately, the house I had bought several years ago didn't have an appropriate stovetop to use for canning. So I keep all my canning at work for now. So that's where I am. Debbie, do you want to share a little bit of your experience?
Wow. Okay, let's see. I've been canning since, I would say, 1990, probably 98. I started with extension in 97, and I did not have any canning experience at all. But as part of the job, that was something that you were expected to do. So that's when I decided to learn. And this was before, I mean, of course, there were agents in extension who had that experience, but they weren't around me. They were in the far western part of the state who had like the really, tremendous experience in it. So a lot of it was learning on my own, self-taught. And then I would want to say they started doing extension training, where trying to get agents up to speed with canning. I want to say that was like early 2000s, and by then I was teaching other agents how to do it. So a lot of it is just for me. At first it started was just at work, but of course you start doing it at home. And right now, for this season, I've already canned chicken, pork, carrots, pickled okra, pickled beets. What else do I have? Blueberry syrup. And I think that's all that's under there right now. I have a counter that's full of canning jars, and that's my goal by the end of the season. Every single one of those jars being filled and in the pantry.
Sounds like you might need some help eating that.
Yeah, I don't have any problem with that between, my husband, my mom, my kids. And yeah, and I'm at the age where one of my children has started producing children. So my granddaughter, she'll help eat it as well.
Awesome. And yeah, baby food. You can can, I mean, right? You can can your own baby food, right?
Yeah, well, yeah, you can, but yeah, actually we never really thought about that. But yeah, whatever, because she eats what I call, big people food, but you just match it up. But now she's 17 months. She's going to be 17 months old. So she's got teeth.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. So we are going to continue on and talk about, wanted to go back. We're going to talk about factors that determine how we preserve our food. So here is an acronym that helps us to think about factors that influence microorganisms and that may cause problems in canning. And so this acronym is FATTOM, and FATTOM stands for food, acidity, temperature, time, oxygen, and moisture. And so all of these, again, are factors that affect the growth, that impact the growth of microorganisms. And the microorganisms in particular that we worry about are those pathogens, because pathogens are microorganisms that make us sick. And that's the whole point in canning. We not only want to preserve something that you or someone else worked so hard to grow, so that we can eat it at a later time. We want to be able to eat it and it be safe from pathogens, so that we can be not only enjoy it during the while we're eating it, but after we eat it, we want it to be enjoyable too, right? So food, usually there's food present, right? So just like we need food to survive, so do these pathogens. They want something to eat on too, right? Acidity is going to make a difference, right? So again, if you did the intro to home canning, we learned that our higher acid foods, they're going to be a little less risky, and therefore we can those in boiling water bath canning. We're going to be able to kill those pathogens of high acid foods in a boiling water bath canner. And temperature. Why is temperature going to make a difference with our canning, or with our preservation rather? So if we leave something out at room temperature, pathogens thrive in that environment. And so that's why by heating it to a certain temperature in that canning process, we're killing it off, we're removing that oxygen from the environment, and we're really reducing the likelihood that something is going to survive in that jar. Time. So time plays a factor too. So we know that we can leave some, let's think about chicken breast. You can leave that out on the counter for a little bit, and then you can cut it up and you can cook it and you can eat it. But the longer you leave that chicken breast out on the counter, the more likelihood that pathogens are going to multiply to a point of making you sick. So again, another reason why we want to properly can, because if things aren't heated to the right temperature, if they're not, if it's not preserved properly, then it is being exposed to time and temperature abuse, and that's allowing opportunity for those pathogens to multiply. Again, oxygen, most of the pathogens prefer oxygen, right? So they typically prefer oxygen, and that's why canning is a great option. We're removing that oxygen. However, there are some pathogens that we worry about, and not specifically to boiling water bath canning, but with our pressure canning, we're going to reduce the likelihood that spore formers and toxins will live in those low oxygen environments. So we're going to heat those to a higher temperature with our pressure canning, but we're not going to worry about those today for our boiling water bath canning. The main thing is that if we follow a trusted recipe and that oxygen is pushed from that jar, it's sealed, it's heated appropriately for the right amount of time, we're going to be good to go. Moisture. So moisture is another thing that affects our pathogens. And that's the availability of water, right? So the more availability of water, then they're going to be more likely to thrive as well. We think about, I'm thinking about like jams and jellies in this situation. and how they actually are, those molecules are bound to sugar, which helps reduce the availability of water. Can you help explain that a little bit better, Debbie? That one always is hard for me to explain, the moisture.
I'm trying to look for my mic. I'm sorry.
Oh, that's okay.
Okay. So with moisture, like if you think about canned food, they're going to be very moist. So, you can have food in the jar, you can have moisture in the jar. So that's going to be, moisture is available. Pathogen bacteria, whether it's beneficial bacteria or pathogenic bacteria, they need moisture to grow. So, but then you have some foods like, right, we're talking about canning, so boiling water canning, so moisture is going to be available. But if we were dehydrating, that would be the control factor. That would be what we're using to control that influence microorganisms. So if you remove enough moisture, it's not enough for microorganisms to grow, and that's how you make the food shelf stable. So that's how moisture is going to work, because all of those things, microorganisms, they need food, so that's always going to be a factor. Acidity, sometimes the acidity is high acidity, sometimes it's low acidity. So if it's low, you have to do something else. The temperature is going to affect it. Some things grow, you have some microorganisms, they grow refrigerator temperature. You have other things, you put them in the refrigerator, it's not going to grow. Or if you put it in the freezer, it's not going to grow. So that's a control factor. Time, of course. If you leave something out at room temperature, if it's out there for like 15 minutes, it's not a big deal. If it's out there for 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours, that's where you're giving something enough time to grow. You have other microorganisms, oxygen. Some grow in the presence of oxygen. Some grow where there's oxygen present, but it's not too much. You have to lower it. Then you have others that grow, specifically Clostridium botulinum, and that's the pathogen of concern when canning, because it grows in the absence of oxygen. So that's the reason why we're going to use temperature, we're going to use acidity, we're going to use time to control that Clostridium botulinum. Specifically for boiling water, the big one, you see that A is highlighted. You see it's in bold. That's going to be the big one, and temperature is going to be the big one. So I hope that answered your question. Is that?
Yes, that
good?
Thank you for just kind of going back over that, because this is very scientific, and this is a very scientific part. And so, all of these affect the bacteria or the pathogens, but they might not apply to what we're doing today 100%. So I appreciate you following up on that, because that's where even I was kind of struggling. But yeah, does anybody have any questions on this particular slide? If not, we'll keep on, okay? All right, so a review of boiling water canning here. So again, this boiling water canner, this specifically is for our higher acid or our acidified foods. So what does that mean, acidified foods? Can somebody tell me or give me an example of an acidified food? Can somebody say one?
I see somebody said tomato, but I was waiting for more information. What kind of tomato?
Yeah. Uh-oh, I went back again.
Oh, high sugars. Okay.
And if you don't know this now, that's why we're here, right? That's exactly why we're here. So there's no wrong answer at this point. I'm just seeing, I hate to read something off and us not even know what I'm talking about. So, you know, I love, who likes pickles? Does anybody like pickles? Give me a reaction if you like some pickles. Because I love, yay, Caitlin likes pickles. And you know what? You can make pickles with so many different types of foods. There are pickled eggs. There are pickled, I was trying to think of one that I probably don't know if I would eat. But you know, obviously our traditional pickled cucumbers. I've done pickled zucchini can. So all of those have had vinegar added, and that is going to acidify that food. So that's kind of where we're going with acidified foods. We have added something that has increased the acidity of that total product, right? And then we've got our foods that are naturally higher acid, and we'll talk about those here in a minute. Also, our boiling water canner, you know what? It prevents the growth of pathogenic bacteria. That's why we're here. We're preserving the food. We're making it safe. We are reducing all those pathogens to a level that is going to be safe for us to eat. That is the goal. And the higher the acid, it really is going to prevent some of those other things that really it can be fatal, which is a good thing. So then
I did. Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I just wanted to address, Caitlin had put down tomato, and I wanted to address that because a lot of times people look at tomatoes as high acid food, and tomatoes actually, the cutoff point, and you're going to get to this, that's why I didn't want to steal your thunder, but the cutoff point for what's considered a higher acid food is 4.6. So if you have a pH of 4.6 or lower, you're considered a higher acid food. If you have a pH of 4.6 or higher, you're considered a low acid food. Tomatoes, they average, for some tomatoes, they're as high as 4.8, 4.9 to 5. So tomatoes are not high acid the way people thought that they're high acid. So that's why you have to acidify tomatoes. So that's why, Caitlin, I saw that I was trying to lead you down the trail for that one. It's like, yes, tomatoes, you have to add lemon juice or vinegar when canning tomatoes because it's lower in acidity. You have to acidify it. So I just wanted to point that out because that one's a tricky one. A lot of times people think, oh, it's tomatoes, they're high in acid, no problem. Tomatoes are the ones that you have to acidify. You have other higher acid like peaches. You don't have to acidify peaches. You don't have to acidify strawberries. I'm trying to think of other fruits. You don't have to add any. But when you were saying pickles, cucumbers, technically we treat them like a vegetable, but they are a fruit. Cucumbers are fruit that we have to acidify. We have to add lemon juice to in order to can it.
Thank you for sharing that, Debbie. And I've always, tomatoes have been a weird one for me too, because they land right there kind of in the middle, and depending on the variety, it can go either way, but we treat them all the same because, that could get way too confusing to say, for this variety, you're going to do it this way, right? So thank you for sharing that. It definitely is a very scientific process, but again, that's why we take classes like this, and also that's why we know about the trusted recipes and resources out there, because then you don't have to think as much about it. You just do what they say to do, and it's going to be great. So again, like we said, that higher acid is going to be a little less risky. We've still got some things that can grow, so that's why we're going to heat that water to a boiling. We're going to heat it to boiling to kill yeast, to kill molds, and prevent that spoilage from occurring. So this is what we're doing today. So here we are. We're here. We've talked a little bit about it. Y'all should have a little bit of an idea. can you name any foods that can be processed in a boiling water bath canner? And maybe tell us why. But, you know, I really want to know, what are some foods that you think can go into a boiling water bath canner and come out safely? And feel free to chat. Feel free to unmute.
I'm thinking like jellies and jams. Maybe you could
Absolutely.
use.
Absolutely. Thank you, Caitlin. Leslie, Tony. Uh-oh. I don't know why it keeps going back. All right. Well, guess what? We're gonna talk about it. So if you don't know, you will. That is for sure. So here we go. Foods appropriate for boiling water canning. So we've got fruit. Loads of fruit, tons of fruit that you'll find. Wonderful, recommended, trusted recipes for. We can do plain fruit. You can do it in water. You can do it in a juice. You know, there's so many different ways that you can can it, and you'll find that out. You can do preserves. You can do jams, jellies, juice, some butters, some purees. Okay, tomatoes, but like we said, our tomatoes, we do add lemon juice to it when we put it into our boiling water bath canner so that it is acidified and we know that it's going to be a safe product. And then all of our pickles, they are acidified and fermented. So these are all going to be safe and appropriate for boiling water canning. Now, is there anything that's not here that you thought maybe you could do, or you know, maybe you have a question about a certain food at this time? All right, I'm just opening the mic, guys. I'm opening the mic. All right, so our equipment is so simple. It's so easy, fantastic. So we want a pot. We want a pot large enough to cover our jars with 1 to 2 inches of water. And that's because it's the heat of that boiling water that's going to kill off those pathogens. And therefore, we want those jars to be completely covered. And as you may know, we've got different size jars out there. There's half pints, there's quarts. So they can really get bigger, and we want to make sure even that those bigger jars can get covered by 1 inch or 2 of water. And again, as you're boiling, what's happening? We're losing water because it's going to evaporate. So even as that water is evaporating, we want to make sure that the jars continue to stay covered. We want a lid tight fitting for proper processing. And we also want that canning rack, which you see pictured there. The rack allows for proper water circulation. So yes, it's important. And also, it just keeps those jars secured too, and keeps them from banging and clanging around, which is important too. We want them and also it helps to take them out easy. So if you see those little handles on the side, you can easily lower and remove those jars from the canner, which comes in handy when you're dealing with hot boiling water, right? Also, there are just some other gadgets that are helpful in canning. You'll notice with different recipes, you might need different things for preparing the particular food. But something I also showed in the last one, or last class, was that we've got some things like a jar funnel, makes it easy to put foods in the jar. We've got our jar lifter, makes it easy to put jars in and out of our hot water. And we've got our measuring tool here, our headspace ruler, and the other side can be used as a bubble freer because again, we're removing that oxygen from the jar, okay? So, and we can't forget this important piece of equipment either, the proper canning jar, our 3-piece here. We've got our jar, we've got our lid, and we've got our screw band. And we want to inspect these things and make sure there's no nicks, cracks, dents, rust. Don't reuse those lids and all that fun stuff. Again, we've got very specific steps for our boiling water canner. And the first step is to make sure you are working with clean equipment. What's the point in trying to kill the bacteria in the food if we got bacteria on our jars, right? So we want to make sure it's all clean and ready to use. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to check out our recipe and see, does this recipe process for 10 minutes or more? And if it does, then you can fill those up and start the process, right? But if that canning recipe does not process the food in the canner for at least 10 minutes, you are going to have to make sure you clean these before. And an easy way I do it is I just go ahead and put them in my canner and just boil these for 10 minutes. Easy. Now you've already got nice warm water ready to use for your canning process. Now, Debbie, is it okay to clean them in just a dishwasher?
I mean, like if you notice, number one, it says sterilize, that you have some recipes where you're only going to process for some jam and jelly recipes. You're going to only process for 5 minutes, and that's to seal your jars, kill spoilage microorganisms, because for high acid foods, it's the acidity that's going after the pathogenic microorganisms, but you have spoilage microorganisms that acid doesn't, the high acid environment doesn't bother them. And that's usually your yeast and your mold. So if you're going to process for less than 10 minutes, go ahead and sterilize. Now, if you're going to be processing for 10 minutes or longer, it's not necessary to sterilize the jars, but they do need to be washed, rinsed. And if you're going to put hot food in them, you want to put hot food into hot jars to avoid heat shock, which just means you don't want to crack your jars. And then also putting hot food into hot jars, depending on the process, you don't want to cool your food down. I mean, you want to have hot food go into hot jars that are going to go into the hot canner so that, you can begin your processing.
See, and all that stuff.
You can leave it, and like you said, I'm sorry, putting in the dishwasher. Yeah, go ahead and wash them, rinse them, and leave them in the dishwasher. It'll keep them hot, and you pull them out as you need them.
See, and that's what my grandma does. My grandma keeps them on the heated in the, but I was taught to put them in the canner and do them for 10 minutes. And I always do it that way. That's what I do. So that sounds like we have two options there that are great options.
You're not hurting anything. It's an extra step. I mean,
yeah.
And a lot of times that's what I do, is like I'll have my jars. The only reason I don't like to do it that way is to keep them from bobbing around. The jars have to be filled up,
right.
water. So when you go to fill the jars, you have to use your jar lifter, get the jar out, and carefully pour the water out so you can fill it up with the food.
So it doesn't overflow.
Yeah, and then you put it back in the canner until you can get all of your jars. So it's a good method, but the only reason I don't do it is because sometimes I'm not real good about getting the jar lifter, pouring the water out into the canner, and not on the stove or not on me, so. But if that's the process you were trained, you're probably good at doing it.
Well, I don't know about that, but but yeah, what you will each find what method you feel most confident with, and as long as you're starting with that sterilized jar, that's what's important. Also, starting with enough water in the boiling water bath canner to cover the jars. So again, You don't want too little, you don't want too much. You want to make sure that you know, it's not fun when it's boiling over and you're having to clean up water off your stovetop constantly. So, but you do, again, you want 1 to 2 inches covering those jars. And then add your food pack, check your headspace, remove your air bubbles. So this is something you're going to see you need to do for all of your recipes for your boiling water. So whatever food or jam, jelly, tomatoes, or whatever you're doing for your boiling water, you're going to put it in there just as the recipe says, leaving that head space, remove the air bubbles. Now, you know, even after removing those air bubbles, you might want to recheck that head space because sometimes that changes that head space as well. Next, we're going to wipe the jar lids. So again, you know, after you've been filling stuff up, even if you use a jar funnel, stuff can get right here on the top of that jar. And you want to make sure that all of that is wiped off. So just use a wet paper towel or whatever and wipe that off so that you have a clean surface for that lid to seal to. So again, you're just gonna fill it up, check the head space, remove the air bubbles, maybe check it again, wipe the rim, just put that lid right on top, and then we're gonna put it on finger tight there. And then since you probably got a hot jar now, we're gonna go ahead and use and you got hot water, you're going to use this and just put that jar right into your canner with that canning rack in there. You can add more hot water if you need to. You can take some out if you need to. And then you're going to put on your canner lid. And we're going to crank up the heat because we want that water to be boiling. And once that water starts boiling and not before, we start our processing time. So again, whether you use a watch timer, whether you use an old-fashioned kitchen timer, whether you use your microwave, your stove, you know, find what works for you, but start that processing time and make sure it's a timer that you don't walk away from and you forgot what's going on. Because again, we want to make sure that we not only process it the right amount of time as far as long enough, but we don't want to do it, we don't want to over process it either because we want a nice product. Remove those jars to a padded surface. Again, you know, we don't want to shock them. We don't want to create any reason for those jars to break or whatnot, because then we've got a mess on our hands. But we also have a little bit of a wasted product there. So we want to make sure that we put it on a nice padded surface or a cooling rack, a towel, whatever works best for you and you have available. And then cool your canned product away from drafts for 12 to 24 hours, and we'll check that the lids are sealed. Again, you might hear a pop. You might see that the lid's concave. You might press down and it not give. So all those are signs that your lids are sealed. But again, during that cooling process, that's when our lids seal. All right, any questions about these steps? So again, this is it. This is all we do for our boiling water bath. There's really nothing to it. The hardest part is deciding which thing you want to can, right? And if you've got your own garden, you know what you need to can because it's coming off, and you need to get it in jars. So, all right. So here is the first activity I want to do with you guys. I changed it up a little bit, Debbie. All right. So I want you to tell me, I've got my boiling water bath canner here. Voila! And I want you to tell me, can I can this product in a boiling water bath canner? So I'm going to show you some different foods. And we're going to see if I can it in here or not. All right. So here's my first product. These are Pintos. Let's pretend like I just filled this jar up. Can I put it back in the boiling water bath canner? Yes or no? Feel free to shoot me a comment, or let's do reactions. Is there an up thumb and a down thumb? No down thumb? Oh, let's see what our reactions are. What reactions do we have, Debbie?
There's a thumbs up and then there's clapping hands.
Okay, so let's do this. If it's no, give me a thumbs up, and if it's a yes, give me a clapping hand. So no, it can't go, or yes, clapping, what did I say? Clapping hands for yes. Okay, so we've got thumbs up from Caitlin. We've got a clapping hand from Leslie. All right, Tony, have you found the reaction? All right, so we've got 50-50 chance here. And our Pintos are going to be a no. So we should have done a thumbs up for this one, because this one is going to be a low acid food and it needs to be in our pressure canner. So we're going to put this to the side for now and make sure he's pressure can in a little bit. All right, the next one I'm grabbing out. Uh-oh, dropped it. Dropped it. We're good. I want to put this to the side before I cause too much craziness. Can y'all still see me? All right.
Yes, we can see you.
All right, can you, hold on, where did the screen go? Let's go back. There it is. Okay, whew, that was, we're getting scary. We're getting dangerous over here. All right, the next one I have is a grape jam. Give me a thumbs up for no and a hand clap for yes. Caitlin says hand clap. Hand clap from Leslie. Y'all are right. So this one's going to go back into our boiling water bath canner. All right, the next one we have is chili. This is got lots of hamburger meat in it. We've got chili here. What do we think? Thumbs up for no, thumbs up for no. You're right. Perfect. Love it. Putting it to the side. All right, the next one we have is a hot salsa. Hot salsa. What do you think? A hand clap, a hand clap. And so both of those hand claps were yeses. And you're right. We can do our hot salsa. But can we do our hot salsa in a pressure canner? What do you think? Yeah, okay, so this one could potentially be either one, all right? So this could go either way you want to be following the recipe. So if it says to do pressure, do pressure. If it says to do boiling water bath, do boiling water bath. And it might be one that gives you an option to do either one. So just follow that recipe. But yay, y'all are learning. I love it, I love it. All right, our next one, we've got a vegetable soup. A vegetable soup. What do you think? Yes or no? We've got a no from Leslie and a no from Caitlin. Great job. So good. Vegetable soup's going to have to be in the pressure. And we've got one more. Last but not least, we've got canned pears. Canned pears. Yes and yes. Good. See, y'all are professionals already. I love it. All right, we're moving right along to our next activity.
I have a question for you, Hayley. Where'd you get all the food from? Did you do all of those?
Some of them I did. Some of them were from my grandma's. Yep.
Okay.
All right, so our next activity. So I was thinking about this and I thought, all right, I can't really can with you guys, which stinks. And you know, while I could have gone somewhere where I could can and shown y'all the process, you know, that's just a lot to do virtually. So what I thought would be neat was to critique Hayley Napier. So I'm Hayley Cowell now because I'm married, but Hayley Napier, she's, like I said, she didn't start canning until she started working for Extension. And this is Hayley Napier when she first started canning back in 2011. And as you see, this was published on YouTube on November 7th, 2011. So what we're going to do, we're going to watch Hayley water bath can some grape jam. This is about a 7-minute video. And we're just going to stop it throughout. We're going to talk about some good things she did, some things maybe she should have done differently if she should have done something differently. So I will take any and all critique because I'm not Hayley Napier anymore. So it's not going to hurt my feelings. All right. So we're going to pull this up. All right. Stop share real quick. Click on that. Pause. Okay. Let's see. Share. All right, we're ready to roll. Can everybody see the screen? Perfect.
Hello, my name is Hayley Napier, and I'm the Family and Consumer Science Agent at North Carolina Cooperative Extension in Montgomery County. Today, I'm going to demonstrate how to use a water bath canner using a very simple grape jelly recipe. The first thing you need to do before you start canning is make sure that your hands are washed. If you have long hair, pull it back and put on your apron. Next, you need to sterilize your jars and your lids. In order to do this, you need to fill your canner up with as many jars that will fit in it and bring your water to a rolling boil. The water needs to be at least 1 or 2 inches above your jars, and your lids need to be simmered for 10 minutes.
All right, let's pause it here. Does anybody have any comments so far what I've said? Is there anything you would have said differently? Or is it sounding pretty good so far? Give me a reaction. We've got our thumbs up for no, a clap for yes. Okay, so far she's doing pretty good. She's doing pretty good. What do you think, Debbie?
I just want to point out one thing. You need to follow manufacturer's instructions with your lids and your bands, because some bands, the box says, and most now, there used to be a time, I remember when I started canning, you used to have to heat your lids in simmering water to soften that compound that's on the little well on the bottom side of the lid, because that's what's going to form your seal. That bond is going to soften during canning, and it's going to allow the air to escape. But then upon cooling, it's going to start solidifying and forming a seal with the top of that jar, and it doesn't allow the air to come back in. With the canning lids now, all of them just say wash, rinse, and hold until ready to use. If you boil them, it's going to boil and soften that compound out so much that it kind of melts out of there. So you don't want to boil those lids. Remember what we said about when you need to sterilize jars, but if you want to boil your jars in hot water, that's perfectly fine. That's okay.
Absolutely. So perfect. Thank you, Debbie. Yay. So yes, read those instructions. That was something that I was taught to do when I first started, was simmering those lids, right? And again, that has since changed. It's something that's changed, and that's why we read those instructions on the box and make sure you're preparing them as it says. All right, let's keep watching old had Miss Napier here. There, she's doing that. She's doing that.
While sterilizing our jars and our lids, we can make sure that we have all the equipment we need for canning. First, we need to make sure we have our screw band and our lids. We also need a dry measuring cup and a liquid measuring cup. We need a jar lifter, a funnel, our lid wand, a ruler, something to wipe the top of the jars with, pectin, labels, grape juice, sugar, and last but not least, we need something to put our jars on while they're cooling.
All right, so we've looked at the ingredients, and I will say, good job. It's a great idea to get all your stuff out and ready, and make sure you have everything you need, because what if you get started and you prepped all this stuff and you realize, I don't have something I need, right? So that's definitely a good idea. Still to this day, we still need that 2-piece band. Some of those other things, even then, I didn't have that nifty headspace ruler. I just used a regular ruler, which was fine. And this is one of the more basic recipes here. What was something I noticed? Anything else that sticks out, guys? As for the labels, again, you can totally just use the lid as a label. You don't have to get labels, but that's kind of an optional thing. Yay! All right, let's keep going.
For the recipe I'm using, you first need 3 cups of grape juice. So you want to pour it into your liquid measuring cup, as so. And make sure the cup is flat so that you get exactly 3 cups. Now, pour your 3 cups of grape juice into your saucepan and add 1 packet of pectin. After you've added your pectin, stir your ingredients together and then bring to a rapid boil. After bringing your pectin and juice mixture to a rapid boil, we are going to add 4 cups of granulated sugar.
Definitely makes you realize how much sugar is in jam.
Now we're going to mix it up, turn up the heat, and let it come to another rapid boil for about 1 minute. After you remove it from the heat, wait till the bubbles calm, and then you can use a spoon to skim the foam off the top. All right, now use your jar lifter to grab a jar out, being careful because there's a lot of steam. It's really hot water, so pour it out very carefully. Now bring your jar over and set it on your cooling rack using our funnel and our ladle. We are going to fill our jar up with grape jelly. Then you want to take the funnel out so you can make sure that there's a 1/4 of an inch of headspace. You can use your ruler to measure the headspace. We want to wipe the rim of the jar very good in order to make sure that the lid will seal properly.
Okay, so far, how are we doing, Debbie? How's
Oh, everything looked great. Things that I would like to reiterate though, when you said you see how much sugar goes in there, in order for a gel to form, it's the right amount of sugar to pectin to acid. So if those ratios are off, it could be the difference between having a gel and having a syrup. So if you reduce the amount of sugar, there's not enough, you're not going to get a gel. If there's not enough pectin, now some fruits you don't need to add pectin, there's enough natural pectin there, but for others, there's not enough natural pectin. So again, you wind up with syrup instead of winding up with the gel. And another important part, you did your boils, you followed your package instructions. It said to add your pectin, bring it to a boil, then add your sugar, bring it to a boil and hold it for 1 minute. And there have been times where I've received calls and they're like, you ask for all the steps and you notice they've skipped a step. So it's always important, follow that recipe. The recipe is not only for safety, it's so that you also turn out a high quality product. So if you can still use the syrup, it's all right. But if you're trying to make grape jelly and you wind up with grape syrup, it might be a little bit of a disappointment.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I guess you could add it to a smoothie or something. I'm not sure. All right. Let's keep going.
Now, using the magnetic end of our lid wand, we're going to grab a sterilized lid. Grab one lid using your magnetic wand. Now, place your lid on top of your jar. Use 2 fingers to push it down and screw on the screw band. Using your jar lifter, grab your jar and place it back into your water bath can. Now you want to fill your remaining jars and bring your water to a rapid boil in order to process for 10 minutes. Now, after we have processed.
All right, I'm going to pause it right there for a second. So did you hear how long our processing time was? Yes. Okay. So our processing time was 10 minutes. So did we really need to boil or sterilize our jars prior to this recipe? No. Okay. All right. See, we're learning. I love it. So perfect. Yes. So this particular grape recipe was 10 minutes, which allowed for us to kind of avoid that extra step, right?
Test our jars for 10 minutes. We can remove them and place them on a cooling rack or on a towel. You want to make sure you give the jars time to cool down in order for the lids to seal properly. There are 2 ways to ensure that the lids have sealed. One is you may hear a very low popping sound, or you can press on the top of the lid, and if it doesn't give, then it is properly sealed. Before storage, you want to make sure that you label your jars with the date and the name of your food product. Also, in order to be a little creative, you can always use lid covers. Thanks for tuning in. This is Hayley Napier from North Carolina Cooperative Extension in Montgomery County, reminding you that you have the will and we have the way.
All right, had to keep that going. All right, cool deal. So was that kind of helpful to critique Hayley a little bit? Awesome. Awesome. I appreciate the reaction. Thank you. Perfect. All right, let's get rid of her. And all right. So does anybody have questions at this time? Any questions? If not, I want to do just one more very quick activity if y'all are open for it. Are we all open for one more activity? Yay. Okay, perfect. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk you through kind of we're going to do it together, a mock canning. And so we're going to do this together. I'm going to show you what I do in preparation for canning something. And so let's do it. Let's do it. Let me pull up my, there we go. Share. All right. So everybody can see my screen again, right? Okay. So today, everybody, what we're going to do is we are going to can peaches. Peaches can be canned in a boiling water bath canner. But you know what? I've canned peaches several times and I still don't remember how long they should process or any of those specifics. Plus, who knows if a recipe has changed. And one thing with peaches is we recently found out that you can only boiling water bath can safely our yellow or orange peaches because the white ones have a different acidity. That was something that came out, and long story short, the first thing I do is I go to Google. Yes, I go to Google, and what I do, I type in home food preservation. And look what pops up when you type in home food preservation is you get this very trusted website. The National Center for Home Food Preservation is the very first resource that comes up. And this is one that I highly recommend that you use and you go to just to see what new information is available. And so when you come to their site, you will see that, you know, you can scroll down, you can see what's new, preserving those unripe tomatoes, orange marmalade, preserving onions. So there's new stuff, there's seasonal topics. Anyway, that's beside the point. That's me seeing a squirrel, right? And so I do get sidetracked from time to time, but we go over here to the side and it says, how do I do all these things? And so I know I'm wanting to can peaches. So I click on can. And then I look for what is it I'm wanting to can. And they have all kinds of information. But today I'm wanting to can a fruit. They have all these beautiful recipes for all these fruits that you can. But again, today I'm wanting to can some peach halves or slices. So this is our recommended, research-based, our tested recipe, trusted recipe for canning halved peaches. And again, the thing about a canning recipe is it's not like a cooking recipe. When you're cooking something, you get to change it up a little bit. You can make it your own. You can adopt it. You can't do that with these as much. You really want to follow the recipe exactly, and that way you know for sure that it's going to be safe. So we've got, again, it even tells us now at the beginning, do not process white flesh peaches. So you might have to freeze those. But in particular today, luckily I've got perfect. I've got the right kind of peach today. Let me go grab my peach. Hold on. Here we go. All right, y'all. I've got my peach. I'm ready to can it. Yay! All right, so I love some peaches. So, you know, I'm reading this. Thank goodness I don't have white peaches. That really worked out. And again, it even tells us some white peaches exceed 4.6. So it's not low acid. And we really don't want to pressure can peaches. They probably just end up being a peach juice or something. So we don't want to do that. But we can freeze those. And then it even tells us how many pounds of peaches that we need to fill up our canner. So if we're doing quarts, usually 7 quarts will fit perfectly into our canner. or 9 pints. So we either need 17.5 pounds or 11 pounds. So then I make sure, you might need a scale. Again, you might need a scale to weigh out your peaches. Or, if you are getting them from the grocery store, they have the scales there in the produce section. Or maybe if you're getting them from a local farmer, you can have him to weigh those out for you if you know you're wanting to take them directly home to can them. So it just depends on where they're coming from and that kind of thing. So I make sure I have those, because if I'm going to take the time to can, you best believe I'm going to get the most pints that I can get out of it. So I want to fill all of those up. And again, quality. We've talked about how you're not going to get in the jar something better than what you put in the jar. So we really want to start off with some quality peaches. We want them to be ripe, mature, yellow flesh peaches that are just beautiful. We don't want them, that are too ripe, or, either way, we want them just right. And again, they've even got links to using boiling water bath canners, principles of home canning there, so that if you get to this point and you're like, hold on, I might need a refresher on what I'm doing here, then you can click on those resources, which is very helpful. And then you notice it tells you the procedure. So this is, again, what it gives you. You're going to have different preparation steps for different foods. So by looking at this procedure, I know what equipment I'm going to need for this canning recipe. So I know I'm going to have to remove the skins. And to do that, I'm going to have another pot of boiling water to remove those. So you dip the fruit in 30 to 60 seconds to loosen that skin. And another reason why to have a ripe fruit, because if it's not quite right, those skins tend to really stick to that fruit. So that is, again, just how we have to prepare it. So if it says to take the skins off, guess what? You have to take the skins off, because that could really change how the preservation and the safety of that preservation recipe. Ascorbic acid. So again, if you're not sure what this ascorbic acid is, it has a link to it right there so that you can click on that. But you can find something called Fruit Fresh in the canning section, and that will help prevent it from browning. You can also use lemon juice too. So these are all options for helping to reduce that browning from happening with your fruit as you are preparing that.
I do want to point out with this particular recipe, with this particular directions, using Fruit Fresh just to prevent darkening is fine. It's fine to use Fruit Fresh. Now, you might have a recipe for acidifying. You have a food that says in order to acidify, they want you to add ascorbic acid. You will have to use ascorbic acid. You can't trade it out for Fruit Fresh. Fruit Fresh is only to prevent darkening, where ascorbic acid is specifically for acidification. Okay. I also, there was another I want to say, I don't know if it's Viola or Viola. I want to say your name properly. But Ms. Moreland said, is it better to can raw fruit or blanched fruit? So I put an answer in there. But I also wanted to point out that we do raw pack or cold pack, and that was in your introduction. So if you go back to the introduction, the first one that you did, you went into depth with that. But I just wanted to point out there are some foods that are better I would say the majority are better for hot pack. You can get more food in the jar. You have less floating. This way you don't have 2/3 of a jar of food and have that 1/3 at the bottom of the jar that's just water. So if you hot pack, you can get a lot more food into the jar. But some foods are better for cold pack. So I gave the example of apples. Apples are better when you're canning them to can cold pack, just because of the apples, they don't do well cooking them first and then putting it, they start falling apart, they lose shape. Another one would be an acidified food, and it's actually fermented, pickles. Pickles are better, meaning better if they're cold packed, meaning you're not going to heat them up first before putting them into the jar, because that's going to cause softening. So you'll put your pickles into the jar, and you're going to actually process them at a lower temperature, 180 degrees, and you're going to hold it for a longer amount of time. You're going to do it for 30 minutes, and doing it at that 180, that'll help you from, quote, cooking your pickles and making them soft. So it's going to depend. Most foods are better for hot pack. Some foods are better for cold packs. So there's some other questions, Hayley. Leslie asked, is it okay to partially fill a jar? For example, you're almost out of your product and you don't want to waste what will not fill a jar to the recipe's headspace requirement. For that type of stuff, go ahead and put it in your jar, put it in your refrigerator and use it. The reason you don't want to partially fill a jar, the recipe is designed to eliminate a certain amount of air out of the jar. If the recipe is designed to drive out 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch, or an inch, depending on what you're putting in there, but you've left 2-3 inches in there, it's going to be under processed. All of that air can't be driven out of the jar. So no, you don't want to process partially filled jars. And then the next one, this is from Susan. She says, do you have to have the exact amount of headspace, or can you have more headspace if you have less product? I just answered that. So you don't want to leave a bunch of headspace, but then also be careful not to fill up too much, because you have some foods that swell. So if you leave too little, usually it's with your lower acid foods where you leave 1 inch of headspace. If it says leave 1 inch and you leave 1/2 inch, you might have food that's pushing on the bottom of the lid. It can break your seal. You could have food that's pushing out onto the rim. You never get a good seal on it because there's just too much food in the jar. So when they specify a headspace, stick with that headspace.
Perfect. Awesome. I did not realize we had so much interaction going on in that chat box. That's great, because I just put it up. I was like, whoa, I missed all this action over here. Perfect. Thank y'all for those questions. Thank you, Debbie. This is great. This is awesome. So yes, she just talked about the hot pack and the raw pack, and that was the next step. It gives you those options, right? But we know that hot pack is going to give us more product in that jar. So that is a great option. And then if you scroll down, you can see, then it tells us how long do we want to process this recipe. And it really changes depending on what altitude you're at. And so if you're here in Stanly County, we're all going to follow the 0 to 1,000 foot there. But you really want to check to see, double check and make sure that where you live in general, what altitude are you canning at? Because that's going to make a big difference there.
Is anyone here from a higher altitude? Do you know? And if you don't know your altitude, now it's really easy. You can Google that on your phone. Your location will tell you what altitude, if you put that in. What altitude am I at? But I'll give you some background. The reason why it changes is because at higher altitudes, water boils at a lower temperature. So from 0 to 1,000 feet, water boils at 212 degrees. But as you go higher in altitude, water might start boiling at 210 degrees or 209, 208 degrees. It's still boiling, but the temperature is lower. Well, when they've designed these recipes for processing, it's based on it reaching 212. So if you don't reach 212, say you're only at 210, you have to process it for a longer length of time. So think back to that Fat Tom. Remember, you had all of these parameters. Remember, time, temperature, and time were parameters. So if you're at a lower temperature, you have to do what? You have to go for a longer length of time. You don't want to go too much time because yes, the food is safe, but what are you doing when you over process food for way longer than it needs to be processed? You're lowering the quality. It's still safe, but you're lowering the quality.
Perfect. Any other questions or comments? I did notice something I didn't even realize here is they've now added the pressure canner options for peaches too. So if you feel like doing maybe testing out a batch in your boiling water and testing out another batch in your pressure canner, you have that option to do that.
And you notice what happens if you do it in the pressure canner. What happens with the time? It drops. It drops a whole lot, and the reason why, you're processing at a much higher temperature, so you get to do it for a lower amount of time.
Perfect. So that is the end of that particular thing. I just want to see how we go through and we kind of prepare for that, and then as always from there you just go through those steps with your boiling water canner like we talked about today. So I wanted to just kind of walk through a recipe with you guys and how to get to that recipe. What we also have really quick is a really easy quiz, and then I will be following up with you guys. I will send, hopefully we won't get kicked off. I'm not sure how this works after an hour and a half, but we'll go through this and I might email you the evaluation, or hopefully if we don't get kicked off, I will send it in the chat box. So, which foods are appropriate for boiling water canning? And just you can say it or put it in the chat box which answer is correct. And I'll open my chat box. Okay, so D, A and C, so peaches and pickles, perfect. Number 2, what are critical parts of the boiling water canner? We've got the rack, lid, pot, or all the above. We've got D again, yes, perfect, awesome. What does processing your jars in a boiling water canner do? Does it prevent bacteria like Clostridium botulinum, kills yeast, kills mold, or B and C? D again, we've got D, all the way down. Perfect. What should you do if you're processing for less than 10 minutes? Should you sterilize your jars, do nothing, don't use recipes that say that, or none of the above? A, yes. How long should you let your jars cool after processing? All right, we've got a B, we've got a C, we've got a B. All right, so yeah, Susan, I think she corrected herself. Yeah, the answer is B, perfect. Who should you contact if you want to sell? Uh-oh, we didn't get to that part, did we? I didn't get to that part. Well, maybe let's see if you know the answer. Does anybody want to guess this answer? Who should you contact if you want to sell what you can at home? Yes, y'all got it. Perfect. So yeah, definitely go check out their website. Look at that. And Debbie, do you want to say just a few words about that?
Well, I wanted to say, it says, how long should you let your jars cool after processing? So it's 12 to 24 hours, and reprocessing can take place within 12 to 24 hours. So if you have to reprocess, that's the time. It has to be before 24 hours. And for reprocessing, you have to act like you're starting from the beginning. All the food comes out of the jars, and you refill into clean jars using new lids. Now, another option to reprocessing, just go ahead and put it in the refrigerator and consume it, depending on what it is, in a couple of days or a couple of weeks. You can do that in lieu of reprocessing. And then for selling, for what are considered your low risk foods, and that's going to be your jams and your jellies. When you start getting into pickles, when you start getting into acidified foods, pickles, sauces, salsas, barbecue sauce, things like that, you may have to get what's called acidified foods training. And then you're allowed to sell those foods, because when you're acidifying foods, it is an extra step. But if you get in touch with North Carolina Department of Agriculture or Google Food Biz North Carolina, that page is going to come right up. It'll walk you through all the steps of having your own food business.
Perfect. All right, so to wrap this presentation up really quick, we talked about why we choose boiling water canning. We talked about food appropriate for boiling water canning. We talked about equipment that you need for your boiling water canning, our steps that we use for all our recipes, and also that we now know if you want to sell your home preserved items, you know where to go now, right? So does anybody have any questions or comments before we say goodbye? Any questions or comments? I do want to add real quick, I put the link to the evaluation in the chat box, so you can get it there. Thank you, Susan. Thank you for joining us. Thanks, Caitlin. I hope you can very soon, and make sure y'all send me pictures. Any other questions, comments? We'll do. Yay, Susan. Perfect. All right. Well, if we don't have any questions, that's it for today. And I appreciate you guys. Thank you so much. I'm going to stop our recording.
And see you next time.
Yeah, see you next time.